Hey guys, thanks for watching. Before I jump into the video, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that watched my looping tutorial. It's gotten nothing but good feedback, and I just really appreciate the positive responses, the comments, the likes, and shout out to those that subscribe to the channel. Just really appreciate it. So for this video, I kind of wanted to expand on what I cover in the tutorial, and if you haven't seen it yet, I'll have a link in the description. So definitely check that out, as I will be referencing a lot of things from that video. So for this, I'm basically going to be critiquing some games that I played, and I thought it appropriate that because the new Killer chapter just came out, that I would start out by going against the Xenomorph. And with that being said, let's jump right in. So here we are on Mother's Dwelling of the Red Forest, and so I'm just going to start out by looking around at what we have. One of the best counters to the Xenomorph is to use the flame turret, as it pulls them out of their power. So I'm going to help out my teammate right there by setting one up for him. So in this scenario, I don't really know what's around me except for the main building here. And there you see the red stain through the staircase. I stop right here for a second to make sure that they're still following, and then notice through the doorway to my left there, you see that the killer has doubled back. So I'm just going to pause here for a second, and it doesn't sound like they're staying in the area, and they've already hit one of my teammates. I'm just keeping them in sight and trying to go for a cheeky little flashlight save here. There we go. And that's too far to get the chain blind. You can just see me checking behind up the stairs. I did a little 360 there because I knew that even if they hit the teammate, they still had the base hit BT. So just to go over this really quick, the Xeno has a ranged attack, so as I'm running toward the window here, I know that if I just vault it straight away, that he's going to be able to hit me with his M2. So I dodge out of the way really quick, and then because I know he has a cooldown, I'm able to just run right back in front of him to vault the window. So just to watch that one more time real quick. And then you notice there that I glance upward to confirm that he's actually climbing out the window after me. If he hadn't done that, if I didn't see that moment where his red stain was coming out the window, I wouldn't have gone back in the house because there's so many drop down points from the upper balcony. So because I see that they're coming through the window, I know that I can go back through the house. And it doesn't look like they committed to the chase. So there I see them up ahead of me. and got him back on me. There I paused for a second and looked like they were going to climb through the window, but then they didn't. So they're out of their power right now because they got hit by that turret. And I'm just going to try to finish off this generator. Get the chain blind. So even though the last gen is popped and my teammates should be working on doors here pretty soon, I haven't really gotten a decent chase this game. So I'm hoping to just kind of take the smoke for a while. So I vault that window to make some noise. Now, this was actually kind of a tricky moment here because I can see the killer through the window there, but then I kind of lose him for a little bit because I lose line of sight through the window. So I pause here, which is actually kind of a dangerous spot because if he were to come down the row right there to my left, I wouldn't really have a lot of time to react. So this is not really the best spot for me to be hanging out. But then I do see them come around to the right, so I'm just gonna stay on the outskirts. And the Xeno has a perk where when they check a locker, anyone in their terror radius screams and reveals their location. So you saw him check that locker there. Not because he thought I was in it, but just to get that info from the perk. And so now they know I'm still close by, and they came around that side, and because the pallet is right there, they're probably going to think I'm going to try to make it to the pallet, so I'm just going to double back. And once again, kind of lost line of sight, but then he did end up coming around that same side. And kind of lost me a little bit there. And then this is one of my favorite check spots on Shack, because to my left you can see the corner, you can see through the window, through the pallet doorway, and you can see down the long side to my right. And so I pretty much always try to stop at this place on Shack. And there you see him coming through the door. So basically, kind of like what happened in Maine earlier, I anticipated that he was going to try to hit me with his M2, so I tried to preemptively dodge, but he did a really good job of adjusting. And notice I don't drop Shack Pallet. I am allergic to dropping Shack Pallet. Even when the endgame collapse timer is halfway done. So here I felt like I had enough time to vault the window. He was still coming through the doorway. And just keeping an eye on what the killer is doing. There I was able to dodge it, and because of the M2 cooldown, I had enough time to vault that window. So there I tucked into the corner there in case he tried to use his M2 over the pallet, but he decided to break it instead. And here I rotate to a pallet. And if you notice here, I basically, I barely start to go to my left, and right as I do that, he starts coming around, so it doesn't really give me time to react in time to get back to that pallet. So I end up going down. But overall, I feel like if that chase was during the match when people were working on gens, I would have given them a good amount of time to heal up, get some progress done. So overall, I feel pretty good about that chase. We are on Sanctum of Wrath of Yamoka. So just checking the area. I saw I had a pallet there. And I'm going to go ahead and jump on this gen. So because we see my teammates over there with Bond, it's pretty safe to assume that the killer has spawned over in that direction of the map. So I know where a pallet is. I see that tile over there that survivor's working on. And there I see the killer. They may or may not have gotten hit by that flame. Looks like they did, because they're up. Now they're back on all fours. And that's a wall. So I'm going to fast vault that window to make some noise, because I want to pull the killer away from my teammates. And notice there how I see him through the window. Now here, I see his red stain coming around that corner, and I don't want to pre-drop the pallet. A, because he could potentially hit me over it with his M2, but also I just want to save the pallet for as long as possible. So I'm just going to move away from that to this window and then check behind me again, and you briefly see him start coming toward the window, but then he immediately turns back and you see the red stain coming around the corner there. So because I know I have Shack right here, I'm actually going to leave Shack. And I got a little too close to the window here before I saw that he was committing. So I didn't actually have enough time to get the speed and distance that I needed to get the fast vault. So that ended up just being a medium, but he actually doubled back anyway, so it was fine. But he probably could have actually hit me there. So if you notice here, I'm kind of looking to my right, expecting him to follow me through, and don't actually notice the red stain on the wall. So I get pretty far into Shack before I realize that he's right there, and then he's suddenly vaulting the window. And so because I'm kind of caught in an awkward position, I'm just going to pull a window tech on him. And there I vaulted the window 3 times, so that's blocked off for me. And it sounds like he has left me there. Michaela's almost done with her gen, which would free her up to go get a save. And the killer's back toward me. So even if I had gone for the save, I would have just run into them. So here, I pause for a second. It might be hard to notice, but I start walking there for a second, almost out of habit, even though he's coming through the door, and that's what allows him to get close enough. So if I had committed to that vault right away, I would not have gotten hit there. I actually gave him a free hit, so that was definitely a mistake on my part. So again, here's another check spot where I can see through the side door to my left, through that window, and around both corners. And so I'm just going to hang out here until I see which way the killer's coming from. And here I see that he started coming through the doorway into Shack. And unfortunately, you don't have much of a view other than that one window. There are some versions of Shack where that window right in front of me is also fairly open. So I'm just kind of assuming at this point that he's committed to going through Shack, and I was correct on that, but it also looks like he didn't commit to the chase. So I'm just gonna hop in a locker and heal up. And now the killer's back on me. I don't really have a whole lot to work with other than just keeping tabs on him and seeing which way he's coming from. That was kind of a free hit there. I didn't really try to mind game that window at all. And then here, because I know that he can hit me with his M2, I tried tucking to one side, but he was able to adjust to that and get it down. And killer comes back, and I was hoping to get the stun there by dropping that filler pallet, and fortunately they didn't use their M2. That actually could have been a pretty easy down for them. So see here how I come around this corner and I just kind of slow down for a second. I'm looking at the corner behind me, so I see the red stain, but I'm checking through the window as well to see if the killer's gonna come through that doorway. But because I see the red stain behind me, I just keep pushing forward. Now, notice here how I see him going through that doorway, but then through that tiny little hole in the wall, I actually see that he's doubled back. So I come back toward the window, but I also anticipate that he might try and hit me through it. So I'm basically just trying to keep tabs on where the killer is without putting myself in a position where he can use his M2 on me. And so there I see that he's coming around the corner. And this is a tricky vault. I've messed up this vault so many times because if you don't swing wide enough, you don't get the fast vault. It ends up being a medium. And I've gone down so many times by vaulting this window and then having the killer, see, he tries to hit right there, but because I got the fast vault, he doesn't have time. So you just really want to make sure that you swing wide enough to actually get the fast vault, while at the same time keeping an eye on the red stain to make sure that they're committing to coming around the corner. So just to actually play that. So he goes for his M2 attack there. And then here I see that I glance behind me as I'm going through the doorway, and I see that he's all the way on the other side of Shaq. So at this point, I don't really need to stay at Shaq. I could technically go to the corner in front of me, but I see that he's kind of doubling back that direction. So instead of going to that corner, I'm just going to move back over to this tile. And this is something I talk about in my tutorial, is chaining tiles, where you just kind of keep the chase contained to... And that was a really lucky miss on my part. So this is one of those quick reaction times. And if the killer was moonwalking, if they had moonwalked around this corner, this actually would have been a bad call. It's what they refer to as a 50-50, where if the killer commits to a certain direction, then you kind of lose because you didn't vault the window. But if you predict what they did correctly, then you win it. So I see that they didn't commit, and their red stain is actually slightly visible through that window. And so instead of vaulting, I just continue straight. And I decided to go ahead and pre-drop that just because I felt like it would be unexpected. Now, notice here how, because I'm not using my check spots effectively, let's go back to where I dropped the pallet. So I pre-drop the pallet and then basically just get out of the way of his M2 as quickly as possible. And I see that he's coming around to that side. But then I don't see him actually commit. So I'm going to come back to where I think I would be able to see him. At this point, it looks like he would either come from my left or down the row where the pallet is. But he's actually still on that side, and so he kind of surprises me there, but I'm able to duck out of the way of his M2. And then again, because of his cooldown, I know I have enough time to vault that pallet and make some distance. And then again here, this was kind of a tricky situation because, as you can see, I thought that he would come through the doorway and try and hit me through the window, but he actually just goes straight. If my reaction time was fast enough, I would just not vault this window as soon as I, but at this point I had already hit the button. So I just was able to do a cheeky little 360 move there. Now, the reason I pre-dropped the pallet here is because there's several factors involved. I've already been hooked once, I'm injured, and we have one generator left, and one teammate is already dead. So Leon's at 50% or 45-ish% on that gen, and I really don't want to go down here because I want to continue giving my team as much time as possible. So it's toward the end of the game, I'm already injured, and we're on the last gen. So that's around the time that I use Shack Pallet, is when it's really crucial that I stay alive for a little bit longer. And now, without him breaking Shack Pallet, it's actually really safe for me. So he decides not to break it. I'm going to pause here for a second to see which way he's coming from. And there you can see the red stain off to my left. So I'm just going to immediately come back to the pallet, and when I see that he's there, I just volt it. But it looks like he just decided to leave. So let's see where I start seeing the heartbeat here. So he came over to check on that gen. And this killer's so tall, it's hard to tell where to actually blind. But they don't really seem to... Well, I guess they are following me, because they know I'm going for the unhook. So here we have a 4-lane, and that was actually a really good hit on his part, because I anticipated the M2 and tried to dodge out of the way of it, but then they actually were able to get the hit on me. And he slugs and goes after Michaela again. But there, Leon is able to pop that last generator. And that's pretty much it for this match. Leon's able to open the gate and escape, and I go up into the sky to meet the entity. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know if there are any other killers you'd like me to cover. I mean, I'm thinking of making a series out of it, but yeah, let me know if there's something you'd like me to add, or any comments or feedback you have. Let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching. Now go be a menace.